The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is not a direct reflection of the host and his guest's current or previous employers. The topics and hot takes discussed are meant to create conversations while offering a different perspective to current issues in the strength and conditioning industry. The opinions shared on this podcast are not meant to demean or offend anyone. However, as my grandfather used to say, a hit dog will holler. Thank you and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Simply Faster. Simply Faster is an educational resource and an open platform for coaches to share best practices and firsthand insights while providing peerless technology, equipment, and service.
All right, welcome everybody. This is Javi Almanza. I am strength coach here at New Braunfels High School in New Braunfels, Texas. This is one of our weight room facilities here. This is what we call the Blue Room. We have two facilities here at the field house. We got the weight room, we got the Blue Room, and then we have a third weight room over on the gym side of campus. That one has 8 racks and is used for primarily our court athletes. Each one of these weight rooms, we have 10 racks. At each rack, we have a couple different items. We have plenty of weight. We got barbells. We got 2 barbells per station. We got a step stool. We got med balls, slam balls, and kettlebells at each station with some bands, some belts, and some chains. We like to go about 5 kids, 5 athletes per group. Sometimes we'll spill into the 6. It gets a little crowded if it's more than that. In an ideal situation, some of the smaller sports, we go 4 or less, about 4 or 3 per group. We have 3 TVs in the weight room. We have 3 in the Blue Room. We have 4 in the weight room, and then another 1 in the gym weight room, and that we use Rack Coach. We use Rack Coach pretty religiously. I think it helps us a ton, especially with there only being one of me, and different sports are working out at different times. So we tend to split up different sports into the different weight rooms. So we'll have softball going in here like we did this morning. Then we had girls soccer going in there like we did this morning, and then there'll be another group, whether it's volleyball, basketball, cross country, tennis. They'll be in the other weight room all at one time. So we got 3 different workouts going on at a time, and I try to be where I can be. But again, there's only one of me, so I can only be in one place at a time. So, we use Rack Coach. I program the workouts. I put them on the schedule, and then all coaches have to do is go on and hit play. Again, we have plenty of space in here, so we utilize a lot of med ball throws, a lot of jumping, resisted jumps with the bands, with dumbbells, with med balls as well. We have a turfed facility here, which isn't the most ideal thing. Actually, that was our only weight room, from my understanding, because this is only my second year here. That was our weight room prior to COVID, and with COVID and everything happening, all the rules and regulations that were happening, we had to spread it out. And so they brought all these racks from that weight room over there and turned this indoor facility into another weight room, which works out. Again, I don't really like the flooring in here. Kids love wearing those pocket Air Maxes, like they're squatting in pillows. This floor is soft, so it's hard for those kids to find stable ground when they're trying to squat. So not the most ideal situation. I would rip this up, or at least put some sort of hard flooring underneath each rack, especially when we're doing our squats and our cleans. We usually keep our kids at one station, a more modular approach where, we're going through our rotation. So we use the rotational segment timer on Rack Coach, where, this group is doing 4 exercises, and then after about 15 minutes or so, they transition into the next one, and then they transition to another one after that. So each class period here at New Braunfels High School is about 50 minutes long, and by the time they run down here, get dressed, we have about 45 minutes to get our workout in. Our bigger groups like football, they use both weight rooms. And then our smaller groups like baseball, softball, tennis, it's usually one team per weight room, and most of the times it's just a rotation of who's in what weight room. There's no preference. The kids love this room. I like that weight room. It's just a little more old school iron plates. We all know those weigh a little bit more than these bumper plates, even though they're the same weight. The hard flooring is great. The windows, we get to open up our windows, blast the music. Wish we had a little bit of louder sound system, but we'll get to that at some point. Overall, across campus, we have uh, 28 racks. So if we can get to 30 racks more in that facility, or even have 20 or 30 racks in one facility and still have a gym weight room for those sports there, for transitioning, it's a lot easier for those sports to go from the court to their weight room than it would be from their court to this weight room. So most of the time we have, like for football, we have varsity or returning lettermen in here, and then we have the JV athletes, developing athletes in there, and then we have coaches kind of split up into both rooms. Um, I also work a lot with female sports, wrestling, um, baseball, basketball, and like I said, we have split groups. So I'll try to kind of work my way through. My goal as a strength coach is to not only coach the coaches and let them know what's going on and what each workout is, what each movement is, but also to teach these kids. And I try not to change up the movements too often. I'll sprinkle in a little diversity here and there, but I want my kids to be familiar with the movement, know what I'm talking about, and learn my acronyms, learn what I'm calling things. So that way, when coach hits play, that's something off his plate or her plate, and the kids know exactly what to do. Okay. So as we walk into this room, again, most of our athletes stay in one room. So the athletes that come into this room stay in this room. The athletes that go into this room stay in this room. We call this the weight room. As you can see, even though the racks are full cage instead of half racks, they have the same stuff. They have the stools, the step-up stools. They have the medicine balls. They have the kettlebells. They have two barbells at each station. They have iron plates, but on the outsides, we have our trees with the bumper plates. We like to set up our racks to where the hooks are on showing 10, and then the safety arms, the catchers are showing 5. And, we just kind of try to keep our weight room looking uniform, looking nice. So the expectation is for everything to look uniform across both weight rooms. So as you can see, we have stools on the left side, medicine ball underneath the stool, kettlebells on the right side, and there's different sizes. Usually there's 2, sometimes 3, and sometimes kids don't put things where they're supposed to go, so they end up on the racks or somewhere else. We try to help these kids out by we have a chart in here as well where it tells them where everything goes. We created that this past summer, and again, just reminding our kids that things have a place and that we should take pride in making our facilities look nice. There's times where I have my varsity softball team working out in here, varsity baseball team working out in here at the same time, and varsity softball is around 16 girls, so we usually take one side, and then my varsity boys, it's usually about 20-ish, so they're on that side, and we're able to split the workout on Rack Coach, which is also another great thing. For our football kids, they start on the field, they do attendance out there. Coach goes through attendance, they go through their warm up out there, and when they come in the weight room, they're ready to rock. For some of my other teams, they actually start in the weight room. So I have a relationship with all my head coaches, and what we'll do is I'll put them through the workout. They take care of all the attendance and whatnot, and then our warm up is actually on the screen through Rack Coach's sequential timer. Again, it's a pretty universal warm up for all groups. So tennis is doing the same warm up as swim, as baseball, as boys basketball, and again, it's on the screen. I'm not having to blow my whistle. Coach isn't having to blow their whistle, having to remember the sequence. It's all on the screen, and the kids know what it is. And it's a 5-minute warm up, and they go through different movements, warming up, whole body warm up, and it makes it a lot easier for us to, get these kids going in a limited time. So RAC coaches really helped us maximize our window of time, which is very small, to where we're rocking and rolling. They have about 7 minutes from the time that bell rings and they're leaving their 6th period class to run down here, get dressed out, and be in the weight room. Have coaches lined up, here on the outsides, on the backside. This room's a little tighter, so whenever you have 4 or 5 people in a group, it gets a little tight, but it works. We bring the barbells out. They can do some other barbell work on the edge of the weight room. Our TVs in the blue room are hooked up through Apple TVs, so we're able to cast them or AirPlay them with the use of our district computers, district iPads. So we have to have 3 different devices here. Up here, this is all on one system. There's a dongle over there that we plug into, so we just need one computer to plug into, and it shoots them to all these TVs. Been trying to get this one on an Apple TV because the dongle is getting kind of old, and this TV starts to flicker. So we don't have the same room. That the height, the ceilings are a little lower than the blue room, so we have to program a little different. So if we're not throwing med balls in here, so usually if I have something programmed for like baseball or softball where we're doing throws or anything like that, we're doing it in that room. In this room, we're programming a little different because of the space differences. But ideally we have 2 rooms that look the same, so that way we can program everything the same. In the gym, it is a little different because it's even lower ceiling, so even our jumps have to be monitored because those basketball boys who are 6'5" and up, they're jumping, they're having to watch their heads because their domes are almost hitting that ceiling. Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, cool.
Everybody, I want to welcome everyone to Season 1, Episode 4 of TheCrocShow. Today I got a guest that every guest that comes on is special, and this guest is no different. This is somebody that I met organically. I put a tweet out asking anybody who wanted to come and join us for a round table at my school, and this is somebody who showed up, and this was about 2 summers ago, and since then we've had a relationship. And as always, I'm going to let this young man introduce himself, tell you any relevant information about himself. And so, Coach Javi, the floor is yours.
Sir, my name is Javi Almanza. I am strength and conditioning coach at New Braunfels High School here in Braunfels, Texas. We met, Croc and I met back in, I guess it was 2 summers ago. I was at the time a football coach, powerlifting coach at Canyon Lake High School in Comal ISD, and I had ambitions, wanted to get out of coaching and get into the strength and conditioning world. And as we were meeting, I think we met about 2 or 3 times that summer. Mm-hmm. There was a post by Coach Streety about wanting to add a strength and conditioning position here in New Braunfels ISD at New Braunfels High School, and so I kind of went through and started the application process, and ended up getting the job. My desire was to be that for Canyon Lake, and it's just the opportunity wasn't there. So proceeded to apply and get the job at New Braunfels High School, and And here I am. I've been the strength and conditioning coach here at New Braunfels High School this is my second year. And then I guess, a little bit more information about me. I'm San Antonio, born and raised, went to Alamo Heights High School, graduated in 2004. And then I ended up playing ball D3 level up in Wheaton, Illinois, just in the western suburbs of Chicago. And I spent 4 years up there playing ball, studying applied health science, running camps for little kids through the local private school. Me and somebody would run strength and conditioning camps up there. And then I spent my first year out of college in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, coaching, teaching in the inner city up there. My best friend, Andy Baker, who got drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. I was visiting him, ended up getting a job up there, and staying up there for a year, came back, started my tour of Texas. I was working at Latonia, Texas for 2 years, left the school, left the education system, ended up doing ministry in San Antonio area, Hill Country area through Stillwater Sports Camps. Spent 2 years there, ended up going back into education, coaching and teaching at Van Vleck High School in the Matagorda Bay area. Spent 1 year there. After a year, I came back to the San Antonio area and took that job at Canyon Lake High School, and I was at Canyon Lake High School for 8 years, and then now I'm here.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Yeah. So, for a lot of strength coaches out there, there's not a whole lot of opportunities where you can go into a role of, just strength and conditioning. Like you were saying, coming from Canyon Lake, the desire was to have this type of position that you have now, but unfortunately it wasn't available. Can you share what your experience was like at Canyon Lake as far as being a football coach, on top of coordinating strength and conditioning for as many people as you could, on top of teaching, and how that has kind of cultivated, what you do now at New Braunfels High School?
Yeah, absolutely. Us as coaches, being in the coaching world, we obviously don't do it for the big bucks, right? Because we don't get paid but pennies for the amount of time that we put in.
For sure.
We have to have a passion for the coaching, a passion for those kids, a passion for just being around young people in a manner that most of the time, you were impacted in that same manner. And I grew up in San Antonio area, and none of my family had really ever done school. Both my parents are from Mexico. They didn't go to college, and so I pursued that. And some of the biggest impacts that were made on me as a young person were through my coaches and my teachers at school. And if it wasn't for them, obviously my family, they loved me and they did as much as they could. They just didn't have that same guidance and direction for education after high school, because they had never done it before.
Yeah.
And so I had a huge passion for my athletes, and especially in the weight room. I started losing that passion for sports just because we were on the field all day, and I still love football. I still love the sports that I coach, but there was a different passion that I had in the weight room and teaching these kids how to learn their bodies, move their bodies, because that's something that they're going to be carrying past graduation. And it's a thing that really just kind of made an impact on me, being able to impact these kids down the road, because even the guy at the end of the bench is going to be able to hopefully should be able to squat and throw the football with his kids, and teach his kids how to run, or teach his kids how to lift weights, bench press, dumbbell curl, and I wanted to have that relationship with those kids. And so I just kind of made my way into the programming on the freshman level at Canyon Lake, and I just kind of taught these kids how to lift, I'm a big technician. I love teaching and breaking down the form of the lifts. I ended up getting kind of like the green light to program for the varsity class, JV class as well, the football program. Started doing that same thing for the basketball program, and then a couple years later, I'm doing it for 7th period girls athletics. And so, I was taking all these things on kind of pro bono, like I was just the guy, I got paid as much as anybody else did. I was an assistant coach, and I just had that passion, and so, there was a little bit of a trade-off with, I had another athletic period that I was able to take on, and those girls wouldn't lift every day, so I kind of had like a 3-day a week in the weight room, 2 days a week I was like an extra conference period, and that was kind of my payment. And then there was a lot of change. The girls had a huge benefit. I was helping out the sports coaches quite a bit, and they were very expressive in in that, me being able to help them out. And then that last year I was at Canyon Lake, I was told that I was going to be put back in the classroom 7th period, because there was 21 of those kids that needed a Spanish teacher in that 7th period, and that I needed to leave my 150 athletes in that 7th period to come teach 21 kids. And that didn't really sit well with me, because I don't think they understood. Like, I wasn't just some coach that was just monitoring. I was programming, and I was leading those sessions, and so that's when I started looking outside of Canyon Lake, and I said, well, if I'm going to be forced to go back into the classroom, maybe there's something else out there. And that's when I saw that post that Coach Street posted on SportsU, and I pursued that position then.
That's great, man. A couple of takeaways, for anybody out there that's trying to carve out that niche or create that position of being a strength coach at your school. Like you said, working with the freshman athletes is a great way to get in. Working with the female athletes, unfortunately, we don't, and I say we, a lot of people don't take the time to really develop their freshmen. It's kind of like, hey, we're going to bring you in, we're going to develop you when we can, and we're going to make sure that we get you out there so you can play and develop those sports skills. And I think all of that is great, but like you said, the last kid on the bench should still be able to squat and hinge, right? And not just from an athletic purpose, but from, a future adulthood, right? You want to go out there and play with your kids, bend over and pick your kids up without your back hurting. You should probably be active. Another thing that you talked about was just, being able to have an impact on those 100+ kids versus the 20 kids or 21 kids. And so, as strength coaches, we're not just we're like PE, we just roll the ball out in the middle of the court and, hey, y'all have at it for the next 40 minutes. I'm speaking from personal experience. When I was, teaching PE, there was times when I just got a bag of balls and dumped them out on the middle of the floor, and it was like, hey, have at it, right? And so I think that school admin, sometimes they don't understand what it is that we do. They think that we teach, it's just lifting weights, right? And if you're somebody that's not active, I don't want to say physically fit, because you don't have to be fit to understand like lifting weights and training and things like that. But if you're somebody that's not active, then of course you're not going to know the ins and outs of, what it takes to write a program, modifying your program for your freshman kids versus your varsity level athletes. Training 100+ people, or in the case of education, how do you teach 100 kids at one time while making sure they're supervised, while making sure they're not getting off task, while making sure that they're showing up every day, or the days that you have training. So it's no different than being in the classroom. And so I think a lot of admin should honestly go and watch and supervise a workout. That will help give them better understanding and everything. I also think that having admin see the numbers and looking at the impact and saying, okay, can we find a teacher to teach Spanish to these 20 kids? Because it's easier to do that than it is to find a coach or a teacher to coach, or in this case, teach 100+ kids, right? I think, like you were saying, just carving out that niche, working with the freshmen and the female athletes, they're neglected, especially the female side. And I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. If you want to get into high school strength and conditioning, working with those female athletes is a great avenue. They're often neglected. They're often, underfunded. They're often put on the back burner. So just going up to your volleyball coach or your girls soccer coach or girls track and saying like, hey, twice a week, I have 30 minutes after school if you want to bring your team in and train. More often than not, you're going to get those coaches that are more willing to give you their athletes because, hey, there's somebody that is knowledgeable about what they're doing, is experienced about what they're doing, and then they're coming to me and offering their services and not the other way around. So clearly they have interest in my team. I have interest in my team developing and all of these different things. So of course you can take them. So, for any young coach out there or any coach that's having to, wear multiple hats while, being a sport coach, being a teacher, and then also, like you said, doing the strength and conditioning pro bono, hey, carve your niche by working with those freshman athletes and working with those female athletes. And then, if you have 12 programs and you're training 6 of them, eventually people are going to start to take notice and say, hey, this guy spends a lot of time working with these group of kids. Let's change his schedule so he can be in an extra athletic period, right? Like you were talking about at Canyon Lake, let's move his schedule so now he has an extra, athletic period where he can work with maybe some other teams that wouldn't ordinarily get your time, because if you're doing football and you're doing teaching, well, then you probably aren't being scheduled in the girls' athletic period. So now you get that freedom, and then you slowly over the years get a little more responsibility and things like that. But like you said, I'm not getting paid for it. And so I think that's the other, I don't want to say struggle, but things that people will have to accept is that you might have to bust your butt for a year, maybe 2, until they maybe toss you a stipend for strength and conditioning. Or like you said, they give you other perks where, hey, you were in 3 athletic periods, now you're in 5. And I think most teachers that are, most coaches that are obviously teachers would appreciate, hey, I only have 3 classes I have to teach instead of 4. Right, or 5 even, right? Especially if you're on an 8-period day and 4 or 5 of those periods are athletic periods and you're only in 3. I think most coaches would love to be in all 5 athletic periods if they had the option. And so I'm glad that you were able to find that opportunity at New Braunfels High School. Let's talk about just transitioning from Canyon Lake to New Braunfels, because for the listeners out there, you're going from a 4A high school which has maybe about 1,000 students to a 6A high school that has probably about 2,500 students, right? So now you're going from the multi-sport athlete where you have those kids that play football, then when football's over they go to basketball, then when basketball's over it's track. You have those female athletes that go from volleyball to basketball to softball, to the 6A level where it's, I don't say rare, but unless you're a dude or you're him, you're probably not playing the big 3, football, basketball, track. You're probably not doing volleyball, basketball, track, or, softball or whatever. So now you have those athletes that are, maybe 1 to 2 sports and not the 3 and 4 sport athlete. How's the transition been coming from programming for a kid that's pretty much in season year round because they're a multi-sport athlete to no, our football guys do football, and then we have, they run track, but they don't always compete in the meets, or, our volleyball girls do volleyball, and it's 2 or 3 of them play softball, but the other 50 girls all play volleyball. So how has the transition been from Canyon Lake to New Braunfels, dealing with, a sport-specific, 1-sport athlete versus the multi-sport athletes?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of being able to schedule and differentiate the workouts with the kids, because as you said, these kids are softball year round or they're soccer year round, and a lot of those kids, they do end up playing like a fall ball, or they're in select sports where they're playing their sport year round. So you also have to be wary of that, because our volleyball girls, even though they're not in season, they're technically in their off season, they're in their club sports, and they're having to go and play at tournaments 5 hours away or in a different state, and they're having to leave on a Friday, come back on a Monday when they played 20 hours of volleyball throughout the weekend, and so you have to develop those good relationships with those coaches and understand the athlete to know what they're doing, and so in some regards, it is a true off season. In other regards, it's an off season, but you still have to program around what they're doing. So it's just constant communication. I'm trying to talk to the sport coach weekly, daily, just, hey, what's going on, being understanding of other things that they have going on in their schedule, to be able to program around that and come back on a Monday after they've played those 20 hours of volleyball and say, all right, we're gonna do up to 75-80% on the squat today because they just got their bodies killed.
Just got wrecked this weekend, and we're sitting in the car for 10 plus hours down and back, and like you said, played 20 hours of volleyball. So
so like the big difference is like having that communication, because at Canyon Lake it was Fridays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays were the days we worked out, and it was pretty much the same thing, because like you said, those athletes that were playing volleyball are now playing basketball, and now playing softball or doing track. It's a little bit more specific here at New Braunfels, a lot more communication, trying to figure out what else they have going on, going from 3 or 4 days a week to going 2 days a week in the weight room, and having to understand what else is going on in their schedules too. So it's a lot more programming, a lot more changing, and it changes weekly, because hey, volleyball just went into off season, football is going into off season, soccer is about to start their in season. Basketball is in the middle of their season. So it's just constant change, constant communication, trying to work those schedules and change it up for them to make sure that we're not overtraining them, and we're just so that sport coach can continue using you and trusting you in their programming.
Yeah, and like you said, the biggest thing is communication. Always talking to your coaches, always following up with your coaches, always making sure everybody's on the same page. And like you said, a lot of moving parts, because now you're at New Braunfels High School where, maybe they had somebody in this role, but now they've taken the role to another level. And now it's like, hey, I'm just doing strength and conditioning, maybe teaching a class or two, but I'm in the athletic periods the other 90% of the day. And so, like you said, having to be in constant communication, you're dealing with athletes that are going from a traditional, when football season's over, we're going into off season. We're dealing with the athletes that we finished with volleyball, we're going into off season, and not, hey, they're doing half volleyball, half basketball, because maybe they're in the playoffs for volleyball and basketball seasons and, preseason or whatever. And so I think as a strength coach, it definitely helps you when you have athletes that are kind of, I don't say put in a box, but in a sense, put in a box where that, out of these 100 football players, 5 of them are going to basketball. So that means I got 95 dudes in off season come November, December, and then January, February, and then into March. Same thing with volleyball. I got 70 girls in my volleyball program, and I got 3 of them that are playing basketball. That definitely makes your job easier versus, hey, I have this kid who's a stud for us, and, when one season ends, they're right into the next season. How do I keep this person moving at, an optimal level, because we don't want them to burn out. If they're playing multi-sports in high school, they're probably doing some sort of club, right? Which means that they're constantly going. So how do I mitigate some of the, overuse and things like that? And so I definitely think that, having worked with the multi-sport athlete helps you in the in-season training, but then also it probably has pushed you in a direction of trying to think about, what would I do if this was, an off season versus, I'm treating everybody like they're in season, because, maybe at Canyon Lake, half the guys are going from one sport to the next and don't really get an off season, or, the ladies, they're going from one sport to the next if they're not already playing both sports at the same time because they overlap. So now that you're at New Braunfels High School, making that transition and everything, and you talked about communicating and stuff, how have you been handling the coaches who all have different needs and wants and that are pulling you in different directions? Because I'm sure when you got here, you probably had some coaches that were like, thank God you were here, take my kids. And then you probably had some coaches that were like, well, hey, we already got it kind of figured out. You can just kind of sit back and I got this, and then you have those coaches that are kind of a give and take, right? Like, hey, I'm going to tell you what I need. I want you to present to me what it is that you have, and then we can sit down and talk and make sure we're on the same page. Me personally, I feel like those are the best coaches to work with, are the ones that, have a little opinion about them, but also have this open-mindedness to like, hey, I'm not a strength coach. So if you tell me that back squatting year round may not yield the same results as mixing it up and throwing in a front squat or a zercher, or maybe not even squatting and maybe doing more of a lunge, if you're telling me that, then okay, that makes sense. I can bend a little, I can change it. How have you been, handling the coaches and their differences of opinion and maybe, like I said, being pulled in different directions?
Yeah, so my first year here, that was kind of my goal, was just to kind of come in, develop those relationships, because I didn't know them, they didn't know me. It's especially in this area, having a strength and conditioning coach on campus is foreign, and some of those coaches do have some sort of background in maybe strength and conditioning, whether it was playing at the collegiate level or what they did in the past at other high schools or what they did in high school. And so every individual is different. The way they approach their team is different. The way they run their program is different. And it's very cool to be able to kind of be in that program and see it from a different perspective, because I'm like one of their coaches, but I'm not one of their coaches. Does that make sense?
No, for sure.
So it's just developing those relationships. Like you said, we had those coaches that were like, oh yeah, thank God you're here. You can have them. Here they are.
Yeah.
Whatever you need from me, I'm here. I'll be there in the weight room with you. I've had those coaches that are like, all right, we're sending everyone to Coach Almanza, and the coaches aren't anywhere to be found. We also have those coaches that were like, heck no, I know what I'm doing, and I don't want someone to come in here and do anything that's gonna, hurt my kids or overtrain my kids. And so, constant communication again, having to develop those relationships. Like I said, it was my goal this first year last year was my first year to get on a personal level with them and let them know, like, here are my training philosophies. Here's what I believe. Here's an example of a workout. Hey, let me run them through something simple. I remember last year the soccer team had started their in-season work, and I was working with one of the teams. I can't remember which one it was. It was either the boys or the girls soccer team. I took them in season, and they were working out, and the other team was like, no, we're good. We don't need to work out. We're starting our season. And I did change it up in season for them. There was a lot of, especially after a game or before a game, we were doing a lot of movement, a lot of unilateral work, hip strengthening, ankle strengthening, and we were just working movement that day. And the coach was kind of like, oh, this is what you're doing in the weight room. If this is what you're doing, we can definitely get on board with that. And let's schedule. They had originally said we're not lifting during the month of January. They were able to see what I was doing with that other team, and they were like, actually, let's get back in the weight room twice a week if we're going to be doing those type of movements. And and it's early on, you have to kind of give them what they want, and then earn their trust, right? Like if they think that strength training during the season isn't something that you should be doing, then you just do what they want, let them trust you. And then when you start throwing in a little bit of strength training, they think they know now that you know what you're doing. Yeah. And so they're a little more lenient of like, hey, we're doing a pause front squat. We got no more than 60% on the bar, and we're doing no more than 5 reps for 4 or 5 sets. But now they're a little bit more trusting you because they've seen what you've done in the past, and they have that relationship with you.
For sure. When I was in college, I had a coach that was saying, like, hey, you got to remember, these coaches are judged off of wins and losses, right? Not so much at the high school level, but over time, if you lose enough, they will definitely find somebody to come in and replace you. But this coach was telling me, like, hey, these coaches are based on, they're judged on their wins and losses. So they have to do what they believe is going to be effective. They're going to do what makes them comfortable. And when you come in as a strength coach, basically contradicting the things that they believe in or the things that they want to do, you're asking them to, like you said, trust that you are knowledgeable and experienced and that you're not going to get their team hurt, that they're not going to be sore for the next day for competition, or, it's okay to lift the day after a game. Like, you're basically educating them in a way that makes them uncomfortable. And I think the great open-minded coaches are the ones that are like, hey, look, I'm not a strength coach, but you are. So if you tell me that my girls will be okay if they lift today, even though we play tomorrow, then okay, I guess I'll take a chance, right? I think it's also important, like you said, you have a philosophy, right? You have things that you believe in, things that you're going to implement across the board, regardless of what sport it is. time of the year, whatever. And just like the sport coaches, they have philosophies, right? Doing things a certain way, an attitude, grit, whatever the mantra might be. And so I think as a coach, as a strength coach, it's great to have your own philosophy, something that you believe in, because then you can, explain it to those coaches. They can see the passion behind it, versus if I'm taking your programming and your philosophy and then basically repeating it verbatim, it doesn't come off as, authentic or anything like that. And so I think to all the coaches out there, it's definitely important that, you have that philosophy. You understand that, like, you're asking these coaches to be uncomfortable. And we as humans don't like being uncomfortable, right? If it's too cold, we're going to go seek warmth. If it's too wet outside, we're going to go see, some dryness. And so it's like these sport coaches are trying to put their best players on the court or the field or track, whatever, so they can go out there and be competitive and win. If you're telling me that this is going to help us and I don't believe in that, well, then you're never going to win that battle. And so it takes them obviously being educated, them gaining your trust and everything. And then, like you said, the best thing you can do is go out there and just coach. And then all of a sudden they look back and they say, oh, wait a minute, like I like how organized you are. I like the flow of things. Hey, I actually see people excited to be in the weight room when they're in here with you. Sometimes that's more than enough to get the coaches on board to give you their kids, right? And so I think that over time, a lot of coaches see, especially when you're working, like I said, the female athletes, you got girls soccer in here and they're crushing it. And now all of a sudden boys soccer is kind of like, well, hey, we play the same sport. We play on the same days. Our sport demands are the same. I like what you're doing with girls soccer. Hey, is it possible maybe we can get in, and then you get another team on board? And so I think, for any coach out there, you may have to be satisfied with 2 or 3 teams, that you get full autonomy on. And then you might have a handful of teams that it's kind of like you said, like, hey, off season, we're here all day, every day. But competition starts in 2 weeks, so we'll see you after the season. And it's like, okay, well, be thankful for the time that you had in the off season, and you can absolutely crush it and they can love it. But their fear of lifting in season trumps, doing any type of, or it trumps anything that you did in the off season. And so it's like, you got to take the good with the bad. And like you were saying, you have some teams that are like, take them. And you have some teams that are like, oh, nah, we've been doing it this way. And that's okay. And I always say this, the coaches that are, so hung up on this is how we've always done things, those are dinosaurs. And we all know what happened to the dinosaurs, right? And so through time, and I think, over the next generation, we'll have more coaches that I think will not necessarily be open-minded, but understand, like, there's analytics involved, right? If you don't use it, you lose it. So if you train all off season and then in season rolls around and you stop training, well, everything that you did in off season is going to be lost, right? And so I think that over time we'll get those coaches that will at least have an understanding of, hey, we need to be lifting year round. We might go from 4 to 2, right? We might go 3 to 2 or even 3 to 1, but like, we need to touch weights at least 1 to 2 times a week, year round. Off season, take them 4 times a week. In season, I can give you 2, right? And I think as strength coaches, we'll always take that. It sounds like you have a great transition from Canyon Lake to New Braunfels. They're doing a lot of construction around here and stuff, and obviously that does impact some of the things that you do. Can you talk about, to anybody out there that may be, getting a weight room knocked down and a new one's coming up, or maybe the football field that you normally use for your conditioning or whatever is being torn up? Can you talk about how, when your school is being renovated and there's construction and stuff being done, how you go about either foreseeing problems that can come up or just dealing with certain issues that are already here, because maybe they, took away the tennis courts that you like to take your kids out there to do change of direction on, and now the tennis courts are closed. Can you just talk about, your school being worked on and facilities being knocked down and facilities being built up?
Yeah, for sure. With the construction that's going on, they did eliminate some tennis courts. They eliminated our practice field. And this fall we didn't have a softball or baseball field because they were also being turfed and upgraded. So we were left with a football field, our competition field, and we were left with our 2 weight rooms. And then we have another weight room over in the gym, but because of the construction that's going on, it also created this kind of like this block from getting to the other side of campus in an easy fashion. So we had to kind of go down 337 here and then take a right. And it was a trek, just having to get to that other weight room and that court. So I would say, with the construction, it did lead to some challenges for us here at New Braunfels. But again, it comes down to being organized, creating calendars, time blocking, constant communication again with the coaches, and as much time as I spend on in the weight room, putting my athletes through workouts, I spend quite a bit of time putting together our schedules and time blocking and making sure, like, hey, from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. or from 7 to 8, 8 to 9, during fourth period in the middle of the day, who's where and what are they going to be doing?
Yeah.
How many days a week? And if you're not going to be there, you need to communicate with me so I can give another team another opportunity. And like, hey, coach, we want to be in the weight room, this many times a week, and come the end of the month, we're gonna change it to this many times. And so again, just a constant communication, and it has to. It makes more work for me, but whenever I have work, that's a good thing, because it means that kids and coaches and teams want to be in the weight room. So and I tell my coordinators this all the time. The fact that we're running into a problem where it's crowded during seventh period or it's crowded during first period, that means that we have teams in the weight room, and we're putting our program in a better position in the future to be successful. So the field issue, time blocking, the gym issue is just time blocking, the weight room issue is time blocking. That's just getting all the coaches and constantly communicating, because there was an issue in the past, when there wasn't construction.
Yeah.
There was teams that would show up to the weight room, and there was already a team here, and so one of the teams had to turn around and go back outside and figure out what else to do. But this kind of gives us an opportunity, and I try to communicate with my coaches the week prior to, they kind of give me a overall schedule of what they want to do for the next couple weeks. Maybe it's for the rest of their off season until they get into their in-season schedule, or whatever the case may be. And I put them on the calendar. I try to make it work. Say, hey, if this day doesn't work, do these days work? Like, just with Good Friday coming up, and we have SAT. I had to change my volleyball schedule for this next week, and my wrestling group had to change. So it ended up working perfectly. Like, the puzzle pieces are there.
Yeah.
I'm a big organizational guy. I'm kind of like, I like things structured, and I like to see things organized. So just being able to move those little pieces on Google Calendars, like being able to move those time slots around, it's so satisfying to see, like, oh,
yeah,
even though this team isn't fitting into this spot, moving it to where this team moves here and this team moves here, all of a sudden it just fits together, is satisfying for me as a kind of an OCD person. But yeah, just that constant communication, creating spreadsheets or calendars to help you using that technology and communicating that to coaches, and the importance of letting you know when you're not going to be there, so that way you open it up for other teams. And yeah.
No, and I'm the same way. OCD, man. I use my Google Drive. I use my sheets, and I created a weight room schedule. And I pretty much put like 3 blocks, because we can't have more than 3 teams at that time slot. And I'm fortunate because right now we have 5 periods a day, and first and fifth period 75 minutes. So that gives you about 55 minutes to train. But then, our third period athletics, which is just football and JV varsity basketball, is a 90-minute period. And so currently, I can fit 4 teams in a day, and I'll just go 2 and 2. And like you said, like, just kind of playing around and matching up teams, and trying to make it as seamless as possible, because the last thing you want is to have too many kids in a weight room. But like you said, it's also a good problem to have too many teams that want to come in and train, right? As a strength coach, you want to be busy, in a sense, instead of like chasing teams down to bring them in. And so I advise anybody out there to, use your Google Drive if you have one for your school and share it. I actually went in, we have like 38 coaches on staff, and I added, at least all of the head coach and then the assistant head coaches to the Google Drive, and you can go in and you can see their team and what time they're lifting and what time they'll be done. And that has helped me because, one, I can be a petty person, and so people will ask me like, hey, Coach Croc, what time do we lift? And I'll say like, hey, go look at the schedule I sent you, right? Because if I take time to manipulate and match up teams on their days and times and everything, and then I email it to you and I add you to the Google Drive so it's actually live, so any changes I make you can see, the very least you can do is read my email and or go to your Google Drive and look at it. And so I think that definitely helps with CYA. Right, the last thing you want to know, to get is a coach that's upset or, well, I didn't know we were lifting today. And like you said, like we use our Google Calendar, and you're penciled in there Tuesday and Thursdays at 9:00, and you're huffing and puffing at 9:30 because you thought that you were supposed to be in there at 9:30 and you missed your time slot. And so it's like, I think that helps to show how organized and disciplined you are, because it's easy as a strength coach to just say like, oh yeah, you guys, y'all show up whenever, I'll be ready for you. But it's like, if you don't have that discipline and that routine, coaches are going to run around and do whatever, and you're going to run into one team's in the weight room, and like you said, you got another team showing up like, oh, well, we just thought that we could come in and lift. And it's like, well, it's not your lift day, it's not your lift time. And if you look at the schedule, you look at the calendar, you can see that there's already a group in here. And so I think that definitely helps as a strength coach to be organized, to, have those schedules, those calendars. And then also it just shows, your foresight to say, hey, it's Good Friday, it's a 4-day week. So my Monday, Wednesday, Friday teams are going to have to be satisfied with Monday, Wednesday, or if they insist on getting their 3 lifts in that week, we're going to have to go with Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever the case may be. And so that's when it gets tricky. But I think that, like you said, when you have communication with your coaches and you start to build that trust, hey, coach, calm down, it's okay. We're not going to get our 3rd lift in for this week, but we'll ramp up the intensity this week. And then that's when your knowledge comes in, where now you're putting that coach's mind at ease by saying like, hey, I'm aware that we have a holiday on Friday and it's a 4-day work week. I'm aware that they're not going to be able to get their 3rd lift in. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to manipulate the intensity, or maybe add something in on the back end to make them feel good, so that way everybody's happy, everybody wins. Ultimately, the kids win because they're still getting good quality training on a short work week. And so communicating, like you said, being organized, having that calendar and that schedule, that will take you a far, far way. What I want to do to kind of wrap this thing up is give you a scenario. This is a scenario for you, but it's more like real life because, it's happening. But my scenario is, you basically get a new head coach, a new head sport coach, and they come in and they've had some experience with strength and conditioning, whether they were running it or they had a guy that was running it or a girl that was running it, and they have a difference in philosophy, right? So put it into football terms, we went from a spread offensive mind to a slot T, right? Just completely different. How do you handle new coaches coming in that want to change the things that you've kind of set and established over the years?
Yeah, well, being in that position is always tough, but I think what we have to understand is, our roles. And if you have someone coming in that's say it's an athletic coordinator or athletic director, it's their show, it's their lane, and I've learned this in my time here at Braunfels, is that, here's what I was hired for, and here's what my job description is, and I'm going to do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I see these teams over here, or I see this program over here, and I would do things different. And I had a friend at King and Lake that always told me, hey, that's one of those things that you put in your little book, little black book. That's your opinion. That's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
But it might not be something that you can implement because that's not what they want. And
Yeah.
You got to stay in your lane. You got to understand. But at the same time, you want to build those relationships and have those conversations. We did just get a new head coach here at New Braunfels High School, Coach Mulder, and just my goal with him is just to build that relationship, and I've sat down with him and talked to him about my philosophies and what he wants to do, and he has kind of given me an opportunity to hey, can you run the off season? Can you run today, or can you do this, or can you do that? Like, yes, sir, I got it, and just sitting down and kind of getting ahead of things and saying, hey, what is it that you would like to see? Because it's not. I don't like to run things in where like, hey, I'm the dude, I'm the guy. This is all through me.
Yeah.
I like to collaborate with the other coaches because the D-line coach or the offensive line coach or whoever, they also have experiences, and I want to give them ownership of what we're doing, and I want to be able to sit down with them and say like, hey, what works? What do you think works? What would you like to see different? What do you think is something that we need to continue doing, and make it more of a collaborative deal where, hey, I'm not necessarily like doing what they, but I'm giving them an opportunity to have a say in it. And then, like I said, talking to, I sat down with Coach Mulder and his offensive and defensive coordinators and trying to talk to them about, hey, what are some non-negotiables? What are the things that you guys want to see in the program? What do you guys think about this? This is what I do. This is what I think. This is how I program. What do you guys think about that? And so I think a big thing with a new guy coming in, and if it's a person that doesn't that has his like, hey, we're going to do it this way, then that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And just kind of continue building that relationship, and hopefully next year, maybe it's a little different. I've had that with a couple coaches here on campus when I first got here. They're like, we're good. We don't need you. You can just take it easy when it comes to this sport. And then having that conversation with them, building that relationship with them, offering like, hey, I can take them that day because you guys are going to be, they're also a football coach.
Yeah.
So they're gone on Friday nights, and they're like, hey, we need you to take care of our baseball team. Can you put them to work? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the kids come back and they're, oh man, Coach Almanza made us do this. It was awesome. We did this and we did that. They're excited. They go back to the sport coach and they're like, oh, okay, the kids really like what you were doing. Tell me a little bit more about what you were doing with them. And then they, you just kind of take what you can get, and then you just keep doing that. And all of a sudden, he's texting me. He's like, hey, we're going to be working out on Saturday. Can you put something together for us? Here's what we did. Here's what we're doing. And now, every time he has a workout, he wants me to lead it, or at least to program it.
Yeah. No, and one thing that you said that really stuck out to me was the non-negotiables. And I think that for all my strength coaches out there, you got to have a non-negotiable, a hill that you're willing to die on, something that you're going to stand for, because I think that makes us more confident in what we do, right? So for me, like a non-negotiable, hey, if it's a Monday and Mondays are real big, like power and speed emphasis, I don't care what it is that you do, but don't go out there and try to trash their legs by conditioning them and then bring them into the weight room, because I'm essentially going to get nothing out of what it is that I'm trying to do, right? I remember when I interviewed for the job that I have, the boys coordinator, he said like, hey, look, like, these are some things that I like to do. So these are some things that I'm open to. And then I was like, okay, well, what are your non-negotiables? Like, what are some things that you are like, hey, I'm not changing this no matter what, right? And I think that when you do those things, you eliminate the potential for conflict, right? Because if I'm sitting here as a strength coach saying, okay, Monday, you had the weekend, that CNS is fresh, we're going to do some speed, some power things outside or in the weight room. And then I got the coach that's like, oh yeah, like, I'm going to tax them today, I'm going to break them off today. And it's like, okay, well, now I got to change what I have to do to accommodate them. But I gotta stand on something. Hey, coach, can we move that, that break them off workout to Tuesday, right? Because this is what we're trying to accomplish. And so I think it's great for everybody out there to have those non-negotiables, but also ask those tough questions, whether you're interviewing or you bring that new head coach in, like, hey, what are some of your non-negotiables, right? Because you might find that their non-negotiables are similar to yours, right? You may find that their non-negotiables are directly impacting what it is that you do. You know, I've had coaches that were like, hey, after every workout, I want us to cut it a little bit short so we can go outside and run a 400. It's kind of like, okay. And it's like, well, why do you want to do that? And it's like, well, I just want them to do something that's hard, that's uncomfortable at the end of the workout, because I want them to spend it all, empty out the tank, whatever. And so it's like, okay, I personally would never take the kids outside after a 30-minute lift and have them run as fast as they can around the track. But you know what? If you're non-negotiable and you believe in doing something hard after a great workout, then who am I to push back, right? Because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you're judged on wins and losses. So if you're, we're in the season and we can't finish games, we can't close people out, and you feel like there's something that we could have done differently in the off season to kind of train us mentally for that, then, that kind of falls on me for being the guy that's like, well, the science says, after a great, a high CNS day, we should do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yeah, but on the field, on the court, track, whatever, like, they're not worried about the science. They're trying to win. You know what I'm saying? And so I think those things are great. I think that, anytime you get that new head coach in, you definitely want to sit down and talk with them. I think you definitely want to try to listen more than you talk, because sometimes they may talk to the point where you realize these guys don't know anything. Unfortunately, right? You're like, oh yeah, at my last job, I coordinated my strength and conditioning program, and we're SBD, squat, bench, deadlift, and everything was 3x10, and we did that every 3 weeks, and then we tested on it, and you can sit there and you're like, okay, this person doesn't have a wide knowledge base of strength and conditioning, so my approach should be educating them on strength and conditioning. Okay, coach, you believe in the SBD, 3x10, every 3 weeks you test. What is your goal? And they might sit there and look at you crazy because they've never really had a goal, it's to accomplish from the weight room. So then it's like, okay, well, my philosophy is, we try to look at the team needs and figure out what is that we need to improve on the most. If we have a bunch of guys getting injured and a lot of it is, shoulder injury, soft tissue, that's things that I believe that we can prevent, right? If we have a team that, is experiencing a lot of fatigue, especially late in the game, that's something that I can assist in. That's something that I can kind of, educate you on and how we condition, or, hey coach, maybe instead of, working change of direction twice a week, we eliminate one of the change of directions and we do like speed endurance or, tempo runs or something like that. So we can, elevate, our conditioning. And so I think that listening more than talking will definitely help, because you want to know how much they know, right? Because you should treat yourself as the expert, as you should be, right? You should treat yourself as the knowledgeable one. I don't expect my tennis coach to know as much about strength and conditioning as me. I don't expect anybody on our football staff to know as much about strength and conditioning as me. So I have to be the expert. So instead of me being the one like, hey coach, we should do A, B, C, and D, instead you should be like, hey coach, what is that you want to accomplish? What is it that you need me to do? And then you can get them to kind of reveal themselves to you. And I think that makes it easier transition, instead of kind of going in with your chest out like, hey man, like I'm all about VBT, I'm all about feed the cats, I'm all about going out there sprinting, lifting at 70%. And it's like, you just gave that person information overload and they don't even know like who Tony Hollard is, or, you know what I'm saying? Like they don't know any of this stuff. So I think that it's definitely important, like you said, to have those conversations, the communication, build the trust, and then like show your work. And like you said, like on that Friday's game day, right? I'm not a football coach, so I'm not necessarily tied to Friday game day. So when you have all these teams in off season, like your baseball, your softball, wrestling, but baseball, wrestling, boys track, you probably have about 3 to 6 coaches that also coach football. I know at my school we have like 5 head sport coaches that also coach football. So I get to be in the room with those coaches, and I get to, like you said, like, hey, Friday, it's off season for baseball, but our head baseball coach is also our DB coach. So on Friday, he's not thinking and worrying about baseball because he's got a game to go out and win. So like you said, then you can slide and say, hey, well, hey, coach, I'll take your baseball team. I got them. And then you kind of do a little smoke and mirrors where like, hey, this is how we're going to organize and train. But you show them a little love and make it fun, because those are your best, marketers, is your kids that you train. Those are the ones that can go out and say like, man, coach, like, oh, how was the workout with Coach Almanza? Man, coach crushed us. And now all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I've been trying to crush these kids for months. They've never been this sore. They've never been this tired. And it kind of feeds into the, okay, well, let me give this guy a chance. Hey, you think you can write me something for Saturday? And like you said, you kind of work your way into building that trust and gaining some of that responsibility. And I think all of that is great. At the end of the podcast, I always give the guest an opportunity to ask me any questions about anything, thoughts or whatever. So, Coach, if you got anything for me, any questions or anything, go ahead.
Let's see, questions. I just like to kind of continue and add, like you were saying that, if you're a young coach out there and you want to get into the strength and conditioning, get on board with those freshmen, get on board with the female sports. And, I think my passion for strength and conditioning really took off with my opportunity at Kenyon Lake when I was programming for the freshman program for the girls. And, as with the girl athletes, they're willing and they're wanting to, do what you ask them to do. And I think, with the female athlete, they need that push. They need someone to kind of guide them and direct them. And so, I always like, talking to coaches about, like, as with female athletes, you're always trying to push them towards, the strength training. And
yeah.
With the male athletes, you're always trying. There's a lot of ego lifting going on, especially in the football weight room. They're trying to do as much as they can, more than they are able to, kind of rein them in. And so,
yeah.
Really just encouraging them to, and that's where my passion lies. It's just encouraging these young kids to be the best that they can be, to reach that potential that they have, and it goes beyond the sport. And I'm a big believer in the training that these athletes receive, not just in the weight room, but going with my affiliation with FCA and just building the better person. We have a responsibility as a coach to make an impact on these kids and these kids' lives. And I always look at sports and training as a microcosm of life. And what better way to teach them the weight of life than through actually the weight of these plates. And,
facts.
We have to crush these weights, and these weights get heavy, but life is heavy, and we got to be able to push through that barrier. And we're gonna, there's gonna be a time when we're adults, we're in our 30s, 40s, and we're gonna feel that barbell on our backs, and it's gonna be, how are we gonna handle that pressure? How are we gonna handle that weight in life? And just being able to use that microcosm on a small scale example of what we go through in the weight room, and being able to teach these kids about life through that. So I just wanted to add that.
Nah, for sure. That's great. I tell my kids all the time when they're like, Coach, this is heavy. I'm like, man, life's regrets is heavy. Mm-hmm. This is small things to a giant, and you're absolutely right. Like, you teach your kids through weight training how to deal with putting heavy weight on your back or having to carry heavy loads, and it's a microcosm too, having to carry a wife and kids, having to carry a family, having to carry your family's name, having to carry the burdens of work. And so, you're absolutely right in that. And I think that's the part that I think, admin and sport coaches got to see, is that we're able to stress kids in a way that, I don't say it doesn't have an impact, but like, you can make mistakes in the weight room. You can't make mistakes in a game. You make a mistake in a game, it can cost you the game. You make a mistake, you miss a clean rep, we can coach you up, teach it up. You get an opportunity to do it again, right? And I think that's huge in our profession, and I wish more coaches highlighted that. And I think that the ones that do should be highlighted and celebrated, because the kids need to be able to feel what heavy is and feel and understand what tough is, because once they graduate from high school and they go out and do whatever, like you said, you get to be 30 and 40, it's easy to sit up and say like, oh, these are my plans for today, and then that back is hurting. You know, that neck, you slept wrong and the neck is a little achy, and all of a sudden it kind of disrupts your day, right? And so that's great, man. I appreciate you, being on the Croc Show. I appreciate you taking your time out and showing us this great facility. I hope that, the new facility that they build, you definitely have your fingerprints on it and all over it. I think that it's going to look nice, and with y'all school splitting up in half, I think getting smaller numbers is definitely going to help too, because it's just like you can be more personable with 60 kids in a weight room versus 100, for and 20 girls instead of 50, right? And so a lot of great things happening around here in the community, and the school being renovated and everything. And so good luck to you. Not too much good luck, since I guess we'll technically be in the same conference or same district for everything but football. So don't work them too hard, right? And don't make them too great, because we got to play y'all in everything except for football. So Coach, I appreciate you coming on the Croc Show. Yes, sir. And listeners, like and subscribe, and see y'all next episode.